Well, thank you, Chairman Young, and thank you to our esteemed witnesses for being here today. Today, we're going to be hearing from witnesses across sectors about how technology is transforming our transportation system, from our vehicles to our roads to our railroads. And I have long advocated for harnessing technological innovation to combat the challenges we face in the transportation sector, from unsafe roads, harmful environmental impacts, to freight and infrastructure challenges that raise prices for everyday Americans. Our prime example is autonomous vehicles. For years, I have said that Congress cannot continue to stand on the sidelines when it comes to these AVs. I believe we must pass a federal AV framework to harness the safety benefits of this technology, ensure that it is deployed responsibly, and cement U.S. leadership in the development, manufacturing, and deployment on our roads. But autonomous vehicles are only one piece of the technological puzzle. When I first came to the Senate, I helped push for positive train control technology that is now deployed across the rail system to prevent collisions and high-speed train derailments. Last Congress, after the East Palestine derailment, we saw firsthand the importance of wayside detection technology, and this committee authored the Railway Safety Act in response. On our roadways, both cities and states have leveraged federal funds to deploy AI and connected vehicle technology to prevent accidents before they happen and to get first responders to the scene a whole lot faster. We've also seen passenger and commercial vehicle deploy advanced driver assistance systems to help keep both drivers and the public safe. But there's so much more to do. As we talk today about the opportunities and challenges posed by transportation technology and the role Congress should play in driving that innovation, I want to hear from our witnesses in 4 basic questions. First, how can we harness technology for economic growth? Technology should not just increase efficiency, it should also increase the affordability for Americans. Second, how can this technology support and not replace our workforce? Technology has the potential to improve safety and productivity for American workers, including America's truck drivers, if we play our cards right. But technology should also create good-paying American jobs, which I believe we must develop and manufacture here at home, here in the United States. And third, how do we ensure emerging transportation technology doesn't compromise Americans' privacy or U.S. national security? So for example, today's vehicle technologies have advanced sensor suites that collect and analyze a huge amount of data, which would be extremely dangerous in the wrong hands. That's why I've pushed to keep Chinese vehicles and vehicle technologies out of the United States. And I want to hear from our witnesses today about protecting data exploitation by our adversaries, as well as here at home. And fourth, and most importantly, how can transportation technology be harnessed to save lives? Every year, 40,000 Americans die on our highways, and nearly 1,000 die on our railroads. And these aren't just numbers, they're families that will never be whole again. We must take action, and we know that technology is certainly part of that solution. I believe it will require government, industry, labor, and advocates coming together to address safety crisis and to ensure that technology is deployed on our transportation system in a way that benefits all Americans. I look forward to contributing to this effort through our discussion here today. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Mr. Spear, I know many of us share a commitment to moving the ball forward on a framework for autonomous vehicles, including autonomous commercial vehicles. So my question for you is, do you believe that a legislative AV framework should include commercial vehicles? And if so, could you expand on why this is important for your members and how the trucking industry would certainly benefit from guidance from Congress?
Well, quickly, absolutely. We would welcome that. I think inclusion with passenger vehicles is essential, but I'd go so far. I'm not competitive, but I would go so far to say trucks are business to business, whereas cars are business to consumer. If you're buying a car, you're going to pick the things that you want on that car. And if you don't want things that drive technology, you're going to come up short on that. Businesses to businesses will design systems around moving freight more efficiently, more safely, more environmentally friendly. These are all things that can be developed faster through our OEMs, which we only have a half dozen compared to a couple dozen auto manufacturers. So, we have a lot more ability to put technology platforms in place, move freight more efficiently, more safely, more environmentally friendly. So, yeah, I think having trucks equal with passenger vehicles, if not leading this platform, would be more appropriate, in my opinion.
Very good, Mr. Scandilia. You represent a lot of truck drivers, and as you heard in my opening comments, the views of the men and women who are employed in these industries are incredibly important to get their viewpoint. So I'd like to get your perspective from your members. You mentioned in your opening testimony some ideas related to what you'd like to see, but for the committee, I would love to have you expand on what you think needs to be done in a national AV framework that addresses the concerns that we have of the men and women who work in these industries.
Absolutely, appreciate the question. I think we're thinking about this in three planks. One is robust pre-market standards at NHTSA, figuring out what has to be on the vehicle to make it safe before it hits the road. The second piece is substantial oversight tools at Federal Motor Carrier Administration to make sure that once there are deployments of these vehicles in a meaningful sense, that Federal Motor Carrier has an idea of how they're functioning and how they're operating, and also has the ability to severably take action and enforcement on unsafe autonomous vehicle deployments. And then in as much as we do see displacement of workers, that we develop an approach to address workforce concerns that may present themselves down the road, both as that relates to workers whose jobs may change. For example, a mechanic who works on a diesel engine is not going to be prepared to work inherently on an autonomous vehicle, at least out of the gate. And similarly, if there are to be displacements of drivers, what does the future look like for them? I think it's important that Congress gets in front of this now instead of waiting until it's too late.
Very good. Ms. Chase, I believe there are many vehicle technologies, in addition to autonomous vehicles, that certainly have the ability to save lives. And as regulators, we must do what we can to harness that potential. That's why I introduced the Vehicle Safety Research Act with Chair Young to codify NHTSA's PARTS program, to accelerate advanced driver assistance systems, their research and their development. It's also why last week I introduced the Vehicle Safety Equipment Testing Act with Senator Fisher to speed the testing of vehicle safety technology so that they can be perfected and deployed quickly. The sooner they're deployed, the more lives that are saved. And that's why I also fought to protect auto safety spectrum from the deployment of connected vehicle technology, and why I and Chair Young have pushed together the Department of Transportation to lead the way on the deployment of CV2X. So if you could give this committee some examples of current CV2X deployments and tell the committee why you believe what are the biggest barriers to broader deployment of these technologies.
Thank you, Senator, for the question and for your ongoing support. So there are several CVX deployments in the country right now that are growing. Atlanta, Georgia has actually the largest current deployment in the country all throughout the metro area and extending now to the Port of Savannah and actually giving freight signal priority, which has been very successful. Maricopa County, Arizona has a large deployment. Salt Lake City in Utah is coordinating with Colorado and Wyoming. And Houston, Texas. Those last three are all funded by US DOT grants. And there are several in your home state of Michigan, Ann Arbor and Detroit. I'm actually going to be seeing the Detroit deployment this week. So some of the examples of what this is providing are transit signal priority, emergency vehicle preemption, freight priority and support, pedestrian and cyclist detection and alerting for safety, work zone alerting, weather warnings, and newer is VDEX tolling. And so there's actually a huge range of applications that are being leveraged as a part of these deployments. We're also seeing some network-based solutions being included now in these deployments. The biggest barrier, I would say, is actually consistent across all technology areas and is consistent with sort of my core message in this testimony, which is that we need to start treating technology as a core element of our transportation system and infrastructure, because that directly ties into making sure that federal transportation funding levels remain stable, and that is clearly prioritized, that these technologies should be deployed and scaled throughout the system. So ensuring that we have consistent, dedicated funding for these projects, ensuring that we are incorporating technology and integrating it into the full life cycle of projects. Those are some of the key barriers to both CV2X deployments, but also broader technology deployments across the country.
Thank you for the answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.